We'll do the 23rd mimer in Chelik Beis in Mamorim Malukat. The Rebbe said this mimer on Motzi Shabbos Kodesh Parshas Miketz, and that was the night of Zois Chanukah, Leil Zois Chanukah, Tovshin Memvov. The mimer begins with Bayom Hashmini Nosi Livnei Menashe. Later on, they published this mimer. It came out in the Kuntra Zois Chanukah in Tovshin Nun, and that was in honor of Zois Chanukah, and the date on the booklet when it was published is the Ner Chamishi the Chanukah Shnas Tovshin Nun. Okay, so we'll do the mimer inside. So Bayom Hashmini Nosi Livnei Menashe Goimer. On the 8th day, the leader that brought the korbanos for the Chanukas HaMizbeach was the Nasi of the tribe of Menashe. And then the pasuk goes on after enumerating all the shvatim, all the Nisim. It says, Zois Chanukas HaMizbeach Goimer, this is the Chanukah of the Mizbeach. That's why Zois Chanukah is Zois Chanukas HaMizbeach. Hine, Yadua, so it's known the Mahataimim al Zeh Shebechanukah Koirim Korbanos HaNisim. What's the reason? Some of the reasons why we read on Chanukah. That's the Kriyas HaTorah. Every day of Chanukah we read of the Nisim. Why do we do that? Why we read the Korbanos of the Nisim? Nisim were makrivit as a gift to inauguration of the Mishkan. And then we do it during Hanukkah. So the reason is because on Hanukkah also they dedicated the Mizbeach. They inaugurated the Mizbeach after the defilement of the Greeks and everything that took place there. So they dedicated, which is Dugmas Chanukas HaMizbeach B'Par Marishoino, which is similar to the inauguration of the Mizbeach the very first time, when the Mizbeach in the desert, the Nisim, brought the Korbanos, then Al-Yedei Korbanos HaNisim. And therefore, we do this also today. Hanukkah, they did it again because they inaugurated the Mizbeach. And that's why we read the way the inauguration took place the very first time by the Mishkan in the Mizbeach in the desert. We said, move on. So from this, the fact that we are bringing in the way the Chanukas HaMizbeach was the first time, and we're Chanukas HaMishkan, the way it was the first time, Chanukas HaMizbeach, the way it was the first time through the Nisim, it's understood the Shmoines Yimei Chanukah Heim Dugmas Shmoines Yimei HaMiluyim, that the 8 days of Hanukkah are similar, have a similarity to the 8 days of the fulfilling the hands of the Kohanim when they were trained. Moshe Rabbeinu was training Aaron, so first he started with the 7th day, 7 days. And then it was Vahi Bayom Hashmini. That is when they actually finally set up the Mishkan. And from there, the Korbanos HaNisim and Los Yechad Bayom started bringing every day a Korban. But the 8 days of Hanukkah is similar to the Shmonos Yimei HaMiluyim, also is similar to the 8th day of the filling of the hands of the Kohanim, of the inauguration that took place before Rosh Chodesh Nisan. And over there too, the 8 days there were 7, and Vahi Bayom Hashmini. Just like the 8 days of the Miluyim at the time were split into 2 parts. There was Shiva Simei HaMiluyim, the 7 days prior to the first day of Nisan. Then there was Vayom Hashmini, Vahi Bayom Hashmini, which was Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Al derech zeu b'shmonos yimei Chanukah. Similar is also in the 8 days of Chanukah. Sheyom Hashmini the Chanukah, that the eighth day of Hanukkah, Nikro, is called Apibinak Yisrael, Gam B'Shem B'fnei Atzmei. It has its own name. In addition to being part of the days of Hanukkah, it has its own name. We call it Zois Hanukkah. So this is like the Yom HaShmini at that time, that it was its own inyan, its own category. Same thing here, the eighth day of Hanukkah is Zois Hanukkah. And the Rebbe explains that's why we find by Zois Hanukkah we have a lot more Torah reading. We read all the way into all the many Nisim, and we go all the way through Bahaloischa till Keinosa Samanoida. So this is a whole lot and a whole lot Nisim and a whole lot of Torah reading. V'yesh loymar, we can say Shezeu Gam. This is also Mashakriya Batoira B'Yom HaShmini de Chanukah, that the reading of the Torah that takes place on the 8th of Chanukah. It's a lot more than the 7 days that preceded. Every day we just read from the Nasi, the Tunisian, but the here we learn a whole lot. The B'Shivas Yom Rishonim Kol Rikodim B'Chol Yom Rak Shnei Nisim. 7 days, first days we read only Tunisian. Actually, on Shabbos, we only do one Nasi because we don't need the extra psukim to make up the 3 aliyahs. But every day we read, not on Shabbos, every day we read 2 Nisim. We read 5. The 8th, we do the 8th, and then we do the 9th, the 10th, 11th, and 12th. That is 5 Nisim. And on top of, we finish up all the Nisim, and we also the end of the parsha of Nosei, which gives the total sum, and then we also go to the next parsha, Veresh parsha is Ba'aloischa Sanedus. The fact that there's a hisofa b'kriyas HaTorah, Moira Amailus Hayom, the addition in reading Torah shows that there is an advantage. So the 8th day of Hanukkah is special, just like by Yom HaShmini. So the same thing is Lemeluim, the same thing is by the 8th day of Hanukkah, and it's manifests itself the fact that there's a larger, a bigger Kriyas Torah. In the Maimer that starts with Baruch She'osa Nisim, that was said by the Alter Rebbe, and it has the notes, and it has notes and points of the Tzemach Tzedek. So over there it says Sheyoim Hashmini Limiluyim V'chein Yom Hashmini, that both the 8th day of Miluyim Vahi Yom Hashmini, when they inaugurated the Mizbeach the first time, the same thing is Yom Hashmini, the 8th day of Chanukah, Zois Chanukah, the Chanukah Hu Malchus. That's the level of Malchus. Veloche Nikra B'Shem Zois Chanukah. Zois is a feminine, Malchus is feminine. That's why we call it not Ze Chanukah, but Zois Chanukah. Ki Zois is Malchus, because Zois is the level of Malchus. So the Rebbe is going to explain now the 8th has in it 2 levels. 8th, which is 8th higher than 7, and then you have 8, which is lower than 7. You do a base. That in 8 there is 2 concepts. The 8th is higher, above, than the Shmini that precedes him. This is similar to the way we explain the words when it says like Oz Yoshir Moshe Oz. So you have Aleph first, then the Zayin. So the Aleph rides on the Zayin, meaning he's higher than the Zayin. Aleph Roichev al Zayin. It's the Aleph riding on top of the Zayin that brings from the Klei Yokar and other places in the Kabbalah. So you have the 8th higher above than the 7, Oz, Aleph on top of the Zayin. The Shiva, in that case, how is it interpreted as far as the Sfiras? The Shiva Heim Shevas Hamidus. The 7 would go the 7 midas, which would be Chagas Nihim. The Malchus together with Chagas is 7. The Chagas and Nihim. That's how you say the Malchus. Ushmini, then the 8th is higher Hubina. That's the level of Bina. That's the Aim Habonim. That's the source and from where the 7 midas come from. That's one interpretation. But the other interpretation, Shmini, who Malchus, Shmini is Malchus Shalamato Misheva Hamidus, that the Shmini is on lower than the 7 midas. And Ukumei Kain, who Benegeya Liyem Hashmini Limilui. Same thing is when we talk about the 8th day of the Milui, Vahiba Yom Hashmini. The Iso Belukute Torah Shnei Pirushim Bazeh. We have 2 Pirushim. Yom Hashminim Limiluim Hulamailo Mizayin Yimei HaMiluim. That the 8th day of Miluim is higher, is above the 7 days of Miluim. Because the Zayin Yimei HaMiluim Heim Bebina. The 7 days of Miluim are in the level of Bina, as it includes the 7 midas. And Yom Hashmini Lemiluim Hu Chochma. But there, the 8th day is level of Chochma. So Chochma is higher than Bina. That's one interpretation. But in Likutei Torah, the other interpretation of Likutei Torah, V'sheyem Hashmini Lemiluim Hu Malchus. And then the other one is that the 8th day of Miluim is actually the level of Malchus. So how do we have these two ideas? On one hand, Shmini is higher, on the other hand, it's lower. One hand, it's Bina and Malchus, or it's Chochma and Bina. So, or as the Alter Rebbe says in Likutei Torah, that Shmini is Malchus, and the others, the 7 days of Miluim are in Bina, and either Shmini is Chochma or either Shmini is Malchus, as the Alter Rebbe says in Likutei Torah. So how do we reconcile this? So how do we reconcile these two commentaries, two interpretations? Is kibichdei shetiha hamshacha b'malchus shmini shelamata mishvi, in order for it to extend into Malchus, into the Shmini, which is below the 7. Udavke al yidei shamshacha himimokim naila yeser shelamaylo mishiva. It is specifically when the Amshacha comes from a place which is higher than Shiva, because it's Shmini higher, it can go down to Shmini lower. So that's what the Alter Rebbe explains with regards to Shmini Limeluim. The Rebbe wants to bring this in also to Zois Chanukah, Shmini, the 8th day of Chanukah. We need to say, Shal derech zeh hu b'negeya l'yom hashmini the Chanukah. That similarly, it's also as it relates to the 8th of Chanukah. Sheyesh bo shnei pirushim. It has the two interpretations. Zeh shebiyom haches hamshochi b'malchus. The fact that on the 8th day the hamshocha is in Malchus. Sheloche nikra zois Chanukah. We said the feminine. It's in Malchus. That's Shmini. Shmini shalamata mishiva. That's the Shmini as it's below 7. Ulifisha sharsha. It's because the root of Malchus will be Shmini shalamayla mishiva. It's in the Shmini which is higher than 7. So that seemingly needs to be, because then it coordinates, it fits in with the Shmini L'Meluim, as the Alter Rebbe explains the Torah. We should say this about Chanukah too. But in the Maimorim, in the Chanukah over there, it doesn't talk about the Shmini coming from Malchus, from higher than Shiva. Over there, it just talks about that it's Malchus. But the fact that in the above Maimer, that explains the Chanukah, and the Rebbe brought down from the Maimer Baruch Shosha Nisim from the Alter Rebbe. So over there, over there he explains the 8th of Chanukah, Muva B'tchilas Ha'inyan. So in the beginning of this subject matter, Raka Pirush Shmini Hu Malchus, he only brings down the interpretation that Shmini goes to Malchus. and not like in those Maimorim that explain the idea of the 8th day of Miluyim, in which both Pirushim of Shmini are brought down. Mashma, so it appears, Sheikar in Yonesh Shel Yom Hashmini the Chanukah, that the main idea of 8th day of Chanukah is not so much like by Miluyim also that it comes from a higher place, but by Chanukah, the main aspect of the 8th day of Chanukah, who Hamshocha Lamato, is that it comes down into the Shmini, into the Zois, into the level of Malchus. And the Rebbe will explain this now.